Three, two, one, go.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from three Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd related media. Now, we have been guest heavy the past few episodes. Thank you so much to all of our guests. But today,
Thank
you
you,
are just
thank you,
stuck
thank you.
with the three of us. And to you guys that have been following us from the beginning, you will know that Nani has not watched Clone Wars or Rebels until the start of this podcast. And I promised to watch it and fulfill the promise. And I'm loving Rebels too, by the way. But in the spirit of that, we decided to do probably a couple episodes talking about some of our favorite arcs from the Clone Wars. And I picked this one. So did you guys
This
like
this
it?
is why we need. This is Star Wars. What Nanny picked is prime Star Wars. There's you can look. You can. It's just now. It's everything, and it's just the most. I was glad in a way that season 6 was so short because
Mm,
it gave I'm the creative team that urge to like, well, how can we cap season 6 of the Clone
Yeah.
Wars, which everybody, we know what it ties to, we know what happens, but
mhm.
what what's the transcendent aspect of Star Wars? And like, bam, put it all together into one last like trilogy act, which just
Mhm, mhm.
blows the mind.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which
and
was
Nani,
originally the series finale because season 7, nobody knew if it was going to
Yep,
happen.
this is
So
how it ended. Yeah,
this
yeah,
originally.
is
so
how it ends.
this is how it ended. So this is the last three episodes of season 6. Um, Voices, Destiny, and Sacrifice, which
Which I'm surprised that
fantastic.
there isn't
Yeah,
like a name for this arc. I was looking online. I'm like,
yeah,
nowhere could I find like what the name of this specific arc was. Let's just call it Yoda's hero's journey because that's really what it
it
ends
is.
up being.
Mm-hmm.
It's even split up nicely into three episodes where he goes through each of the bit major steps of the Campbellian thing that we've discussed before, and we will continue to discuss in this episode. But I think also one of the very nice things about this arc is that it ties directly to another arc that is very uh, beloved by the fandom, and an arc that we've already discussed as well in another one of our episodes that I think is one of our strongest episodes, which is the Gods of Mortis arc, the Mortis arc. So this one, Mortis doesn't play into it, but it's still the mythical and religious and spiritual aspect of the Force. So it kind of ties in very nicely with that. Annie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your thoughts were when you saw this, as you know, as seeing it for the first time?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Uh,
and you can always check that out. It's one of our last season episodes. And while you
yes.
do that, hit subscribe button right there. It will actually notify you
Yes.
when we talk about Mortis.
Yeah,
Call
yeah.
to action. Yes.
So call to action. So yeah, so it was the ninth episode of our first season, Gods of Our Own Making. If you're interested on listening to our Mortis take, uh, which I mean, Mortis was fantastic. But again, like what you were saying, Goose, like even before I started watching Clone Wars and everything, there's certain arcs that are always mentioned. So you kind of know about it even before you watch it. So
Mhm.
you always knew about Mortis. I did not know this arc existed. So when I was watching season 6, which was supposed to be, those stories that didn't get told and then got told in this season, which I mean, the season is still really good. I wasn't
Mhm.
expecting this arc to happen. So when it
Mhm.
starts, I mean, and even the crawl at the beginning, the it's madness can sometimes be the path to truth.
Mhm.
I was like, what's happening? And
Yeah.
then
Yes.
yeah, and then obviously, the first episode, which is voices and fantastically voiced by Liam Neeson. We get Qui-Gon back, and and
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and it's
Best Jedi
so
ever.
good.
The one, the only.
The one, the only. And when we had talked before, when we talked about Mortis, about was it really Qui-Gon, or was it a vision, or was it a dream, or and I think all three of us agreed that it was really him, but this solidifies and confirms it that
Mhm.
it really was Qui Gon coming through, and it's there's so much happening mythically because Yoda is the one that receives it. Yoda, who is supposed to be the wisest in the Force, and as you were saying, this is his hero's journey, which proves that you're never too old to begin your own hero's journey, and you can probably do more than one hero's journey. Who knows how many he has gone through, but he goes through another hero's journey again. And the reaction of the council is there's to distrust his feelings. Assuming that he's gone insane or he's senile or he's being manipulated by the dark side instead of trying to listen to him. That's their initial reaction. So you can get
kind of reminds me of The Last Jedi a little bit, because Luke having a hero's journey in the twilight of his years, and in this case, the council is the fans, like being like, "Wait, what? What's the master doing? Going through these things again?" So it's interesting that you framed it like that, because I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah. So I thought that was great. I also love the fact that he chose Anakin to help him. Once he's kind of like tossed aside, like he's a crazy old man, let's just run some tests. And then you get that whimsical side of Yoda, which is like the first Yoda that you meet in Dagobah originally, which I always love when Yoda plays that aspect of himself. And it's like he actively chooses Anakin to be the one that help him. Oh, you know, you've had issues with the council before. You're gonna get in trouble, but
You're the one
you'll be fine. Yeah, you're appropriate for this.
I think at that moment Yoda says something really interesting. He told Anakin that what defines Anakin is Anakin's spontaneity, which was very interesting, because the very first thought that came to my mind was, well, Vader is actually known for order. So it was like a clear contrast of Anakin, who is a spontaneous being, versus Vader, who becomes just a power hungry order everything. So I love that contrast. It was like a jab into like eventually what he also sees at the end. So wanted to bring that in.
That's good. I hadn't seen that
either. Before going into like all these deep deconstructions of the episode, for the benefit of people that have not had the privilege of watching these episodes or haven't seen them in a while and don't remember, Nani, why don't you give us like a quick run through of all 3 episodes, just so people know what happened more or less before we go
in general before
like
we okay. So basically that first episode voices, as so far we have described, Anakin does help Yoda to get away, and then Yoda goes on an adventure with R2D2, which is fantastic that R2 was included in this journey, which means the R2 would have known Dagobah, because that is their first stop. So they go to Dagobah, and that's when he meets the spirit of Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon explains what he's I know what he's been through, and the path that he was on, and the fact that he wasn't able to complete his training, so he can't actually physically manifest. He can only, talk through the Force in certain ways. The fact that Yoda has been chosen as well, and now Yoda has to go through the same process. And I have to be honest, I think that the run through, we need to deep dive, honestly. Like, we have to go episode by episode. It's too hard to just kind of.
I think it's just it's too mythical. Because even the first episode, it opens up with Yoda meditating under the tree, and the leaves are falling, which brings fall, the change, the initial death.
And then what happens at the end of the third episode?
And then what happens at the end is the focus on the tree, but instead of on the dead leaves, it's the focus on the blossoming flower. So it's we have to talk about, because
we have to talk about it. Yep, I agree. I agree with you, Mo. You have to go through it.
So Yoda hears Qui-Gon's voice, and then everybody freaks out. It's like, what is happening? Because like everything we knew, that's not supposed to happen. But I love that Yoda was the first one that's like, well, like what we know, which was like, and told Anakin, it's like, and Anakin quickly, that's the beauty of Anakin. Like, he quickly sees the openness of things, which is such a like stark contrast with the Vader, which is the Sith,
Mhm.
the one pointed minus versus the open minus.
Mhm.
That and even so like the first thing they tried to do is like use like, oh, like you're medically wrong. Like they went through like
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
different tests, like, and I was watching the episode with my sibling who's like studying some med school and was like, what's the part of the brain that's like glowing? And I was
Uh-huh.
like, he told me, well, it's like where the vision, the temporal sound, and words all come together. So that's why at that moment Yoda couldn't know if the voice was coming within him or outside.
Mhm.
There's no way because
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
brain can create that
Oh,
illusion.
good. Yeah.
So that was that
Attention
that
to paying attention to detail. Yeah.
so there's that element of Yoda still questions his reality. He's
Yeah.
starting, everything's crumbling. He just know, like he's noticing that, hey, my apprentice went to the dark side.
Mhm.
I can't trust even my longtime friends are questioning me. They're against me.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
can't trust
Mhm.
anybody. Yet he's able to trust a voice that claims to be Qui-Gon,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
very interesting because it's coming from that feeling of being connected. And then I love that the
Mhm.
next step after the medical test, they go to an isolation chamber,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which is set to induce a near death experience.
Mhm.
And I mean, from experience, I've been to like 10 isolation chambers, and it
Really?
is, oh yeah, like you actually experience what you call your ego death. You cease to
Mhm.
exist. It's just
Wow.
motions. You can't,
Holy shit.
because you're not
Mhm.
experiencing anything. You're in a complete dark room. You're just floating in water. You don't hear anything. You don't feel anything because the water is at the same temperature as your body. So you feel you're just expanded consciousness.
Holy shit.
And yet,
Yeah, that sounds intense. So it's extreme meditation, basically.
well, yeah, I mean, I use it as an extreme form of meditation. It's used for also like rehab. It's used for uh, anything. There's, if anybody ever wants to, there's like, uh, what's his name? Something on Leary. It's called about, it's how to use the isolation chamber to fine tune the different aspects of your body and yourself,
Mhm. Mhm.
which was the journey. And then you get there, and then Qui-Gon tells Yoda, "This is not the way,"
Mhm.
and that mimics the experience of going into that deep meditation, where it's like, "This is not the way." You're trying to hack yourself into
Yeah.
Mhm.
something
You're
that
trying
is
to
not.
force it. Yeah, you're trying to
You
force
That
it instead of
that.
letting it happen naturally. Yep.
and you're
Mhm.
preventing the actual journey, the
Yeah.
one that Yoda has to embark on.
Mhm.
And that's when the whole, like, it's amazing how Anakin comes in and it's like, oh, I'm gonna use you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you claim to be my friend, right?
Prove it.
Yeah.
and
I
then
know.
and then
I love it.
maybe TIE fighter prototype for Yoda.
Yeah,
I
a
know.
little tie interceptor. Yeah, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
look at the baby tie interceptor.
Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously he goes to Dagobah, which for
Yep.
me was so big. It's like Dagobah. Oh my God. And it's this planet that, it looks dark and like forbidding, but then when you actually get there, and
Mhm.
then it's that juxtaposition of it looks dark and uninviting, but it's teeming with life. That
It
there's
is,
Mhm.
just
it is
life
life.
everywhere. And then you get the image of Qui-Gon, which is like this will-o'-the-wisp, like fireflies,
Mhm.
kind of like, it evokes that whole, running into the will-o'-wisp, maybe they will try to drown
Mhm.
you in the swamp kind of look of it. And then when he like attaches himself to the tree, it looks like a burning bush image,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
so there's so much like religion and myth and everything just invoked into that.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
and I especially like how Qui-Gon in starts Yoda's journey in Dagobah by saying the light will be your guide. So it's like
Yeah.
yeah.
making
Mhm.
making Yoda open up himself to be like, okay, well, you believe in the light side of the Force and you believe in the Force itself, so you just have to
Mhm.
make yourself open to it and let
Mhm.
it guide you naturally. So I think that was like a fantastic way to do it through those wisps of light night that you were saying, because Dagobah, as we've come to know it through Empire Strikes Back and other media, is like a nexus of the dark side of the Force, which is why it's interesting that the planet is teeming with so much life, and it's something that we'll obviously touch on when we talk about the other two planets that we visit through
Yeah.
the arc. But a planet with life, and then it's teeming with darkness. But Yoda has to find the light within himself to be able to find what he needs.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then he reaches the cave, that infamous cave that Luke and
Yep.
Kylo
Mhm.
and like now Yoda, like all these
Yep.
people have had to
Yeah.
go through to discover something about themselves.
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, no, the
It's happening.
cave.
And,
It's
and
so
then
well done.
like right
Mhm.
before Yoda goes into the cave, Qui-Gon is like, you know, give your power to that which you fear,
Yes.
and it'll become. So that's the power of the mind. Right now,
Yep.
that's this is visions. Visions is this the journey of from mind to spirit.
Yeah.
That's those are the three arcs. Vision is the mind. We're in the mind. What your mind creates is it ties with also with the first episode. Qui-Gon, my favorite phrase. Your focus determines your reality.
Yep.
It, but even through all that, Qui-Gon is like, well, there's always hope. Doesn't matter what you go through. There's always hope.
Yeah.
Though it often comes in forms not looked for.
Yep, definitely. I also do love that he actually calls Dagobah one of the purest places in the Force. So just because it's very strong in the darkness doesn't mean it's also very strong in the light. It's just because it was framed that way in some of the films and everything that we see Dagobah, but it's still very pure in the Force. So yeah, it was fantastic. I do also love that Qui-Gon from the beginning, the whole thing is about looking for the path to hope. So even from episode 1, you kind of see what's going to happen in the last episode. That is, you're not going to win the Clone Wars. It's not going to happen. This is about finding the path to guide the next generation.
Yeah.
This is the way that you're going to guide the next generation. He's like, look for the path to hope. This is where we do it. This is where we start.
How to bring your consciousness past death.
Yep. And it's that. We've never known that this could happen. And like you were saying before, Mo, that beautiful when Yoda's talking to Anakin and he's like, Anakin says, but as far as we know, what about what we don't know? And even Yoda,
that's the beauty.
Yep, that there's no limit to what you can know, which leads us into the second episode, actually, right there.
But before going into the second episode, when we go into the cave in Empire Strikes Back, Luke sees the vision of Darth Vader, only to see that it's not Vader he's fighting, it's the darkness within himself. What is it that Yoda sees when he goes into that cave?
He sees Sidious, right?
No, he sees
Sidious
he sees
at
Moraban.
No,
but he does see. He sees a vision of Anakin.
Anakin chopping down.
Except he doesn't see Anakin. He sees a robed figure killing younglings and killing.
But then Sidious comes in, and it's like Sidious.
He shows up at the end.
Yeah, at the end. It's such a good and a call to like. I love when Yoda asks Qui-Gon well, where are you, or where do you exist? And Qui-Gon was like, where I exist, where there's no future or past.
Yeah.
And then so then you keep asking, then where do you exist? And the only answer is Qui-Gon exists in the now. And that's the power of the Force. That's where the balance is. You learn from the past and you're aware of the future, but you have to live in the now. There's no other place to be.
Which is something that Qui-Gon said in Phantom Menace, right? It's like when Obi-Wan asks him, like, "Oh, but Master Yoda told me I should be mindful of the future." And what does Qui-Gon say? But not at the expense of the moment. Keep your thoughts here and now, where they belong. Which is the important thing. Qui-Gon doesn't say, don't look into the future.
No.
It's like don't forsake the now because of the future, not at the expense of the moment.
Mhm.
Which is something that even me at 11 years old, when I saw that movie, I was like, oh shit, I don't know about philosophy, but there's something there. There's something there that's important.
Yep.
There's something there.
And that's the beauty. Like the madness can sometimes be the path of truth. You have to lose
Mhm.
your mind. You have
Yep.
to break away from everything that you thought you knew, which we will see in the second episode, the destruction of the
Mhm.
hubris, the ego, the
That just reminds me of something Yoda said, something along the lines of, you must unlearn what you have learned.
there we go.
Mm-hmm. And
This is
where
what
do
I
you
love
think he
about.
got that? Because
Where,
he
where,
learned it here.
because he learned it here.
Well,
This
I
is
think this is what's genius about like not just the Clone Wars, but Filoni in general. Is like that ability to not just expand the mythos, right? Of like, oh, what happened between
Yeah.
2 and 3, but like be able to do it in a such eloquent way of bridging all these philosophical elements of both trilogies and give them even more depth and meaning. Because obviously, when we see Yoda in the prequel trilogy and Empire Strikes Back, they're completely different Yodas. And
Yeah.
like the Yoda from Empire Strikes Back is this whimsical, playful, wise master that says that wars don't
Mhm.
make you great. But then when you go into Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, Yoda's like this way more dogmatic person that's like kind of quick to make decisions and judge and be uh, delved into his own hubris, and obviously is comfortable in war making. So like this trilogy of episodes is like so crucial to understanding that Yoda at one point in the Clone Wars finally understands that
Yeah.
this is not the way. This is not where the Force wants the light and the Jedi to be, and connects him directly to the Yoda of Empire.
Yep.
So good.
And that's the beauty. Like hope, there's always hope, but not in the way we expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
Because
something else that Filoni does so much that I love, especially looking at Mortis, this episode or some of the other Force focused episodes of Rebels, it's his like masterful play of dualities. Because like he
Mhm.
just plays with like not only shorthands in terms of like the topics that he's talking about, but also visual dualities and binaries of like light and dark and life and
Mhm.
death, and Sith and Jedi. Because when we go to Moraban, we see like Force uh, Sith spirits that are attached to the living realm but aren't free. They're prisoners to the slaves to themselves
Yep.
because the Sith don't want to leave the mortal plane while the Jedi want to transcend. So like it's just such a beautiful world building, not just of like the themes that he's putting into, but also like how they're representing it through the visual means, right, of the show. Because when I saw the planet that they go to now in the second episode that we're going to discuss now, has such a stark contrast with Dagobah when you see
Yeah.
it at first. But then you go into the surface and it's like, oh wait, they're not that different after all. Even though they're framed different in terms of like how bright and dark the other one is. But then when you go
Yeah.
to Moraban is when you finally understand that like, oh, this is the actual antithesis of the other planet. These two are actual like synonyms in inverted ways, while Moraban is like the antonym of both of them.
Mhm. It's so well done.
So,
It's fantastic. And this whole exploration that we've always had in the background, but this time it really did explore it, that cosmic force versus the living force, and how you transcend one to the other but still keep it in balance. It's so good. And then that's when we start to leave that first episode, when Qui-Gon basically tells Yoda that, this is as much as I was able to learn. So this is as much as I can guide you. I can tell you where you have to go next to continue your journey. And that's when we transition to the second episode, which is Destiny.
And death
And then,
is just the beginning.
the
yeah,
fortune cookie.
but you see that and you're like, oh my God, okay. And then you also, when it first starts, I first thought that it might have been Mortis, because you get all this bright everything that you can't really see. So I thought it might have been Mortis at the beginning, but then obviously you don't. But there was something so beautiful about Yoda himself, just letting the Force guide him. It's like, there's no way to get to the planet. There's all this gas. There's everything. He starts freaking out
Mm.
for a little bit, and he thinks that R2 is controlling the ship. And then he's like, nope, I will just let the Force guide me. And then we get to our second planet in the arc. So what did you guys think about this one?
The wellspring of life, a planet in the Golden Nebula. I was saying a little bit before, but I think now that we're fully in it, I'll give my impressions of it. Like, I thought it was such a beautiful way to frame both planets, because when we see Dagobah always from the outside, it's like this dark and dingy, cloudy planet, and then when you get to
Dark,
the surface,
swampy, like
cloudy, but you get down and it's full of life, but it's always still dark and
swampy and like
swampy.
rotting.
I was gonna thank you for saying swampy, because I was gonna say moist, and that's a terrible word. But then you go to the wellspring of life, and it's the direct inverse. And it's been a long time since I've seen this arc, so like I didn't remember a lot of the details. So like when I saw the episode, the planet at first, I was like, oh man, this is a perfect contrast to Dagobah, because where Dagobah was swampy and dark and gray, the wellspring is like super bright but dry and barren of life. And it was funny because then we go beyond the surface and we go within the planet. We go within the planet where the light is emanating from it. We see that it's also teeming with life. So in a way, it's like that opposite to Dagobah too, where Dagobah is teeming with life on the surface. The wellspring of life is teeming with life in its core. So it's like the two ways, like the Force is manifesting itself through life, which kind of makes me think now, if the life that's within that planet isn't life from the cosmic force instead of the living force. Because the life in Dagobah is obviously the living force, which is life as we would know it normally. But because that life in the wellspring of life, the planet of those priestesses, is like beyond the realm in a way, I wonder if it's like a life beyond the life that we know. I don't know. That's just me thinking now that we've been talking about these things.
Well, honestly, I think the planet is kind of one of those transition places. Like you get the living force that dies, and then you create it into part of the cosmic force, because they call it, that life was actually emanating from the planet. And you can see when the priestesses like step on the ground, like life flourishes from their footsteps as well.
Oh, so good.
So,
but when they touch it,
but when they touch it with the hands, it decays.
And then so I think this is one of those like transitional places where, they absorb the dying living force and attach it into part of the cosmic force. Yeah.
So it's the literal heart of the Force.
It is
the pumping.
It is the heart of and there you go. That's perfect. You went from the mind to the body, heart. The 5 priestesses, the 5 sense bodies, the 5 ways through which we get awareness of this world. That's what you need. That's the mind needs to come back to the body. Face your own fears. That's the juxtaposition. Like what we create inside is still life. It's still living. And it was interesting that Yoda left his saber before going into this planet. And I think symbolically,
the opposite of Luke.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
it is what he tells Luke to do. You will not need your lightsaber to go into the cave, but he takes it. In this one, Yoda himself accepts and gives it to R2. He's like, I will not need this.
Yep.
So I loved it when he said that. I immediately thought of Luke too.
But Yoda also does something that's a direct callback to that Luke scene in Dagobah, which is when he's talking to the 5 priestesses. I think it was the anger priestess. He was telling him something about him being afraid, like he not afraid of like doing like the trials in the in the planet, and he responds to like him not being afraid because he knows everything from within him. And I was like, oh, that's the same thing, because Luke is like, oh, I'm not afraid of these trials, and Yoda's like, oh, you will be, which is like, oh, how does Yoda know that you will be afraid of a trial?
Because he learned it here.
Through that.
Yoda went through that.
Which I think it's so beautifully done, how it harkens back to how he's able to teach Luke how he began the Clone Wars, which you said as well, Goose. And so yeah, so we're in this new planet, and then we meet the priestesses. I love how they're these emotions. At first, I thought they might have like represented the sins, like when they first show up, and then I'm like, no,
It's
they're
more like
not.
it's more like
Yeah.
Pixar's Inside Out. Sorry,
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
a little more serious.
Well, definitely. And obviously the easiest ones to pick out are, sadness and joy and anger. And then you're thinking about the other two. One's
It's
peace, maybe.
confusion,
Yeah,
and
it's
serenity.
confusion and serenity. Yeah, but at first you're kind of a little bit confused about which one those two are supposed to be.
I see that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's really well done, because sometimes you don't really think about confusion as being something that important, but it really is. And
well,
serenity
Anakin
as well.
A poster boy for confusion, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And
but
serenity.
I was reading in sorry to cut you off just to say this.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I was I was listening to like a interview with Dave Filoni, and he was theorizing, which I don't know why he's theorizing, because he should know because he wrote it, but he likes to leave it up to us, right? He doesn't like to give straight answers. But he was saying that the 5 priestesses at one point were one being, that like through death and like millennia of being in the cosmic force, they split their consciousness, which is very, Christian Trinity type shit, right? But with 5 instead of 3, which I thought was an interesting way to like look at it, which is like it's all because it ties back to you going through your own journey and finding different pieces of yourself. It's like we are all these separate things that we can divide, but ultimately they all live within one.
Yeah.
I thought was a cool thing.
And that's the mind. We have our emotional feelings, and they live here. We have our animal feelings, and they live here. We have our brain feelings, and they live here. We have our spiritual or whatever needs, and they all live here. So it is a complete source of confusion. You yourself are the source of confusion. That's why you start hating yourself. That's why you get your shadow self. That's the part that even you yourself are like, yeah, I'm not gonna accept that because it's not me. And it just festers and festers, and you break your consciousness. We are just broken consciousness. This is I love like when they entered and R2 was like kind of stumbled.
Yeah.
And Yoda was like, awakened you are, my friend. The choosing instead of awakened is someone that has seen the veil of what's real and what's not, but you're still not able to participate in it. You that's what R2 stays behind. So it's an awakened being. You're not an enlightened being. You're just aware that there's this stark contrast of life and death, light and darkness. But they're all the same. They all coalesce to the same thing. That's the cosmic force. That's the living force. It feeds into each other. It's just one beautiful amalgamation of everything. And until you do not learn to love yourself and accept yourself, then you're gonna be a broken consciousness. You're gonna succumb, and it's beautiful that serenity is the one that coalesces and breaks apart, because I'm trying, the word just slips my mind, but
that's the palo viejo.
Yeah, that's the palo viejo. but
if you're listening to us, give us a sponsorship.
It was interesting that Yoda like told the dark shadow self, "Oh, I have mastery because of training. I have mastery," and that alludes to being able to. I don't like mastery over your feelings, because you never gain. That's not a thing. What you become is you become serene with your feelings. You become a being that's able to accept everything.
Find balance within yourself.
Find the balance,
perhaps.
Well, I didn't want to use that because balance doesn't come until the 3rd episode. So the first, because now we've been through the mind. We've been through the mind. Now we're now the mind and the body are clashing. The five
Mm-hmm.
senses, how we perceive everything, our touch, our taste, our eyes, our
Mm-hmm.
feelings, and how the amalgamation of the mind. What does it mean? What's real? What's not? That's why Yoda cannot bring the saber just yet, because
Mhm.
everything is real and everything is fake at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of this world. Everything manifests and decays, and at this at the will of those that enter with the right intentions. It was very evident that the five being one of, I think it was anger, was like, well, do you
Is
have
he
good
worthy?
intentions? Are you
Yeah.
worthy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's in your heart? It was
Mhm.
very clear, like you're
Yeah.
worthy because you have good intentions in your heart. It didn't say you have good intentions in your mind. You don't have good intentions on the future. It's just on your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made Yoda worthy.
Mhm.
But that's not, just because you're worthy doesn't mean that you are ready for the journey. You still have to defeat the ego.
Mhm.
You still have to defeat the
Yourself.
hubris
Yeah.
Yeah.
yourself.
Which
And
is
then
the next journey, and Yoda is very. I've been training for years. I know myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing to learn from you. Is basically his attitude. Like I know myself, and it's so great because then they point, to the island, which we get another metaphor. First it was the cave, now we have the island, and it's that island represents
Yeah.
what you
Same thing.
would
Yeah.
call evil, but
Mm-hmm.
is fear, and then saying that all that has not been conquered, basically. And
yeah,
Yoda still has this attitude of, well, yeah, I'm a Jedi, I have conquered my fears. Well, okay, go along, go. And
Yep.
then what is he confronted with? That, dark Yoda. and and he fights that Yoda, and at first he says that he doesn't even recognize him, like he hadn't even acknowledged his
Mm-hmm.
existence. It's like,
Yep.
I don't recognize you, I don't know who you are. And the dark Yoda says, as long as you continue to not acknowledge me, the stronger I will grow in power.
Mm-hmm. Which is
And
obviously also direct comparison with what's happening with the Jedi and Sith in general. As long as you
yeah.
don't recognize that darkness, the
Mm-hmm.
darkness always gonna consume you. Because it's like in real world, so to speak. If you ignore
Mm-hmm.
the problems you have in your life, those problems are not gonna go away. They're gonna,
Overtake you.
multiply and
Yeah.
consume you. So
Mm-hmm.
it's part again of that balance. Balance is
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that darkness lives within you, and you have to accept it and welcome it, and it's part of you, and you just have to find the
Mm-hmm.
light and overcome it, but always acknowledging that it is a part of you.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just
Yep.
cast it away.
Yep.
yeah. I love the idea that even like the first phrasings of this shadow self were, and I don't remember who coined this or where it came from, but it's the idea of like healing the wounded child within.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Everything that Dark Yoda was like, oh, you don't love me, you don't take care of me,
Yeah.
you abandon me.
Yeah.
It's
You
that
Mm-hmm.
ignore
idea.
me. Mm-hmm.
You ignore me. It's that idea. It's that fear that we are being ignored, that we are not loved, that we are not taken care of. But nobody else. It's not your dog, not your significant other. Nobody else is gonna define or love you at the end of the day. That wounded child can only be reclaimed and loved by yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm. Yep.
that's Yoda was like, I don't recognize you. But then what was at the end? Oh, I do recognize you.
Yeah,
Like,
because lying to himself. He does.
you're,
Yeah,
yeah,
he does.
stop lying to
Yeah.
yourself. Like,
Yeah.
and then
The only
And
so
I
way that I
do
would have
love.
thought.
Mhm.
Yeah, I seen.
Go,
Are you gonna
go,
say
Goose.
that?
Go, Goose. No, it's go.
I was
Go.
just gonna say something quick. I was gonna say like the only way I think that scene could have been even better than
Mhm.
how it ended, because when like Yoda was pulling Dark Yoda close
Yeah,
to
I
himself,
thought
I
he
thought
would
it
have
was gonna be
absorbed
like
him.
Tron.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be Tron
Yep.
Legacy. And it was
Yep.
like,
And he would absorb him. Yep.
yeah.
Like
which I felt I felt it would have been better, frankly,
I
than
think
like
it
what
would have.
ended up happening,
Yeah.
because like because if I'm not mistaken, like he like destroys him, and
Yeah,
I'm
he
like,
kind
well,
of
that kind of,
disintegrates him. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I felt like, okay, I mean, fine, but like that's weaker in terms of like what you were setting up, because you were setting up the acceptance
Mhm.
of darkness, and you don't accept darkness by destroying it. You're actually
Yeah.
kind of doing the visually anyway, doing the opposite.
Yeah.
If he had like
Yeah.
absorbed him, it would
Mhm.
be
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the,
It's-
And
cherry
that
on
was
top for
what
me.
I was expecting to happen as well, because it's
Yeah.
that you don't acknowledge it, but you reject it. So
Mhm.
I get the visual of it, like you reject it, but you acknowledge it, accept it, take it into yourself, and then don't let it overpower you. Would have been
Mhm.
better.
Yep.
But it's still it it was still well done, that aside,
Yeah, yeah.
honestly. But I do love the fact that hubris was his darkness, which I think
Mhm.
was the sin of all of the Jedi at that
Yep.
point. And that's why they fall. It's this idea that we know all, and this is the way that it has to be, and we have nothing else to learn. That even the priestesses tell him, you came here with the mentality that we had nothing to teach you. You
Mhm.
assumed that you already knew everything. And that's it, it's hubris. And
It is.
somebody
Which-
as humble and fantastic as
Yeah.
Yoda was still consumed by hubris.
Which
And
is
he was
something I think to be a little meta about it, something that translates also to like Western society and Western civilization, where it's like we
Mhm.
have all the answers because we are at the pinnacle of civilization. It's like, hey, there's other points of view in other societies that aren't like the the one that we think is the highest form of society that can still teach you something. So like that's I think one of the wonderful things about Star Wars, that it kind of takes all of these like big concepts and puts them in kind of palatable ways so that like we can, not only us but younger people, also be
Yep.
able to start grappling with these perspectives of duality, right, and conflicts of the within and the questioning of the authority or whatnot.
Or yeah, that's
Yeah.
it falls. That's any even more like on top of that is like how it ends, like recognizing that the beast is you and you are the
Mhm.
beast.
Yeah, and you are the beast.
Well,
Like
then he has a separate different trial afterwards at the Valley of Extinction, where he sees
Where he has to
two
face
different
the
visions.
temptations. Yeah,
the temptation. Yeah.
the
And
temptations.
he sees the Jedi falling, right, during I think he sees the battle with Darth Sidious and like all those Jedi falling and
That
Mace
was in
Windu being.
visions.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Because I know, like in the Valley of Extinction, he sees like Ahsoka, like in the floor, and he talks
Yeah.
to her. Uh, but
Which
So
in this
was
one, he also.
because that's confusion. Confusion's making that vision.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
the
Well, you
I-
start with him seeing like the younglings dead on the floor, and then
Mhm.
towards the end, like he sees some of the younglings, and then he gets to Ahsoka, and then you understand in that moment that one of his biggest regrets is what happened with
How
Ahsoka.
that was handled. Yep.
and it's the only time in this season that you see or hear Ahsoka in this entire season. That's it, and it's a
Yep.
vision. Yeah, it is, and it's so well handled, and you can tell Yoda at first he only calls her Padawan, and when he thinks
Mhm.
she's Ahsoka, come back to us. I mean, no, I cannot have failed you this badly.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
from that, it transitions to that scene at the temple when everything's supposed to be perfect now. And then you
Yes,
see his
with,
second greatest regret, which is Dooku still being a Jedi.
and
And
Qui-Gon
him
and
alive.
Qui-Gon
and
alive.
Qui-Gon alive, and Anakin talking with them too. And it's so well done, because that is what would have been perfection for him. The continue the height of what the Jedi was. We still don't know enough about Yoda's past to know, what he went through before any of this, but that's
Mhm.
basically his idealized present.
Yep.
Would have been that, continuing the piece that the Jedi were doing. And it's so heartbreaking when he just like walks and you can see just their backs, like Ahsoka and Dooku and Qui-Gon
Mhm.
and Obi-Wan just having a conversation. And as soon as Count Dooku turns around, Yoda's like, "Traitor, I'm gonna attack you." And it's like, no,
Yeah.
we're just sharing stories together. Oh, okay. And then when everybody goes away, then he realizes, no, this is my ideal. This isn't real. I felt the pain.
He's
Yeah.
tempted by denial and perfection, two things
Mhm.
that we can never achieve. I mean, we can't achieve perfection, and we can't deny, you know, the things that have
And
happened now.
perfect serenity.
Mhm.
That was basically perfect serenity, which isn't real. So, and then he accepts it, and Dooku turns into Dooku and attacks him with a red lightsaber, and then you're just a vision, and it goes away. But it's that accepting of and not being tempted by the five priestesses, because they said you will be tempted by all of us, but you have to see beyond it. So he gets the anger, the confusion, the sorrow, the serenity, and he's able to see beyond that. I think the biggest trap was the serenity, especially for Yoda.
Which means
way
he
more than
passed that
Joey.
test, but not the final test, because now he must go on a mission from the priestesses into Moraban, a planet of the Sith, and face a final test before he can finally learn the things he needs to do to transcend in death. So the fortune cookie for the episode, which I think it was fantastic too. It's mostly all the fortune cookies for all these episodes was facing all that you fear will free you from yourself, which ties obviously to this episode, but it could also tie to all the other Yoda episodes that we've seen before.
Yep.
And kind of start the episode like how I was talking about the previous episode with the description of the planet itself. When you see Moraban, it's the complete opposite of the wellspring of the Force planet, and it's similar to Dagobah in that it's dark, but then when you actually go to the surface of the planet, it's the opposite of both planets.
It's red.
It's dark. It's dark. It's red. It's dusty.
It's sandy.
It's deserted. Sand gets everywhere, and
Anakin would not like.
It's not. It's definitely not moist. It's not a moist planet.
No, it's not a moist planet. It's a dry planet, and no one likes dry. But the big thing about the planet, though, besides all those things, is that it's dead. There's no life. Yeah. There's no plants. There's no animals. There's nothing. So this is
completely deserted and arid and just kind of really depressing. Honestly.
Yeah, the whole planet is a cave, basically, the metaphorical cave, so to speak.
Yep.
And we have a fantastic cameo in this episode. I don't know if you guys remember, but Darth Bane is voiced by Mark Hamill, which when I saw the episode for the first time, I didn't know that it was Mark Hamill, but now in hindsight, knowing it, I'm like, oh, I hear you, Mark Hamill. It's like you're so good. It's like you're a uber Jedi, uber Sith now. But Annie, what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts with this final episode of the arc?
Well, yeah, I love the juxtaposition of that you actually get here, and now you finally get to a dead planet, and then you get obviously you get Darth Bane, and then Darth Bane being, I am the creator of the rule of two. Like this arrogance of the Sith were being consumed by greed, and they all murder each other, and I'm the one that survived victorious, and I decided to train only one. And if you want to be trained by me, talking to Yoda, you must destroy me. And Yoda being like, you're already dead.
You're dead already.
So you're already dead. You're gone. Bitch, please, you have no power over me. Go away. But I mean, the look that he has, it's basically lava under armor. It calls back to, the Mustafar, the lava, the destruction. All of the symbolism that has been happening in the movies for forever, just kind of being brought together in this moment, and Yoda being the witness to it.
Which is always like a funny thing though, when I see Sith ghosts or spirits or something, because it's always something that's quasi confusing, because George Lucas has always said, and they've kept it up with Disney canon, that Sith cannot come back from the netherworld of the Force, and they cannot maintain their essence. But we still see these ghosts, but it's always interesting to see how these Sith ghosts come back. It's always they're attached to something physical, and it always seems that they're not comfortable in being tied to the things that they're tied to. They're always like a slave to the thing that they've possessed, and they can't. They're in anguish always, because they've, instead of having the freedom that they've sought by trying to transcend life, they've actually become enslaved by it and tortured by it. And like the eternity that they wanted is not liberating in any way whatsoever, just like death within the Force for Qui-Gon and Yoda and Luke and all these other Jedi and Obi-Wan, obviously, it has liberated them and made them transcend and become one and become more powerful, even though the more powerful we can debate all day long. But yeah, like that's why in a way I felt this episode was kind of like the weakest of the three, because like Yoda dispatched Darth Bane real quickly, even though I understand why. But I don't know, like at some point it was kind of like, okay, well, we've seen this before. It's like Yoda facing a test and overcoming it. But Darth Bane wasn't the main test of this episode. This was kind of like Legends of the Hidden Temple. This was like one of the little tests before going into Olmec and the actual temple at the end of the episode. What happened that Yoda actually had to confront at the end?
Wait, sorry, what's that?
What was it that Yoda had to confront at the end of this episode?
Who was it or what was it?
Both.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, we're getting confused here.
they're
Before we get
different.
to the actual end, I think we have to acknowledge the fact that I do know what you mean, Goose. Like we've been beaten across the head a little bit that Yoda's been going through trials. Yes. But in this one, you actually give the Sith a chance to fight back. Because now you are at the center of their power. And then the priestesses show up right before he actually goes to the final test. And the priestesses say, we have no power here.
Yeah.
The previous tests were brought by
Our
us.
test.
We tested you. Yeah. And you have been.
Oh, no, finish that.
Yeah. So the priestesses say that we have been testing you. From now on, we have no power. Your enemies have power. And what they say will seem like an answer.
Yes.
So you go in there with your own expectations already as well. And now you're actually fighting the enemy. And you have it's their source of power. So you have no idea what they're going to bring through. And then you see the other side, Dooku and Sidious know that Yoda is there. So they plan accordingly. We are going to break Yoda. If we break Yoda, we will give a blow to the Jedi Council, to the war, to everything. We have something here that we can take massive advantages. We can get into his psyche because you were his Padawan. There's a connection there that we can exploit.
And he's wearing his beautiful ceremonial robes that you can unlock in Battlefront 2.
I mean, you have a Yoda that's already been through a bunch of tests. He's psychologically been through a war, basically. And then at the end, it's his biggest foes. And they have control of what he sees now.
They show him Sifo Dyas.
Perfect timing. I gotta talk. There's something I have to say about Papa Palpatine. Is that he is where he needs to be at the right time. Oh, yep. He is
the true master of puppets.
Exactly. And you haven't seen that episode, go watch it. It's very good. He's like, I mean, what are the odds that like, because he's Supreme Chancellor too. He should be like in his office doing like Supreme Chancellor things, and all of a sudden he's like just in his dark robes in his like little dilapidated palace with his little seeing bowl from Lord of the Rings that Galadriel had, and it's just like, oh, hey, Dooku, come on, it's speed dial, come on. I just so happened to catch Yoda at the minute he needs a Sith trial. Yeah. So just
and Dooku was close enough that he can actually get there on time too. Yeah.
So I'm like, kudos to the dark side. The dark side's got some perfect timing.
He is the master of puppets.
They've shown Yoda how much the dark side has control over the galaxy. So
they
probably have control over space time. So
well, not yet, because he doesn't have the world between worlds yet.
Not yet.
That's in episode 10. Somehow Palpatine's return.
Oh my god. But anyway, so he gets dragged in, basically tries to be tempted by Sifo Dyas, and
Which is a
And
really
this
crap
is-
attempt. Like,
It is a really crap attempt, but this is why they don't understand. And I
Weak
think
sauce. Weak sauce.
Goose was talking about this because they try to tell him, I will show you what the Sith know. And Yoda's like, you guys are basically obsessed with the physical plane.
Captivated by the physical realm, the Sith are.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had
It's-
to. Do
I
my
don't-
voice.
Of course you did. Which is how they trap Anakin, because Anakin is so short-sighted. I mean, this is the way that Anakin got trapped. All about the physical realm. And that's how they try to trap Yoda, which is like, dude, Yoda's on a quest to try to transcend death, and you're just offering him to live
Life,
forever. Yeah. It's not gonna work on Yoda. It's just not. So that was really short-sighted right there. So, but then what they do after that, it confuses Yoda as well, because then Yoda gets this vision of himself with his troopers and Anakin having a chance to get rid of both Dooku and Sidious, who obviously nobody knows that it's Palpatine. And
what?
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Oh, Mo, you look so epic right now. Oh, shit.
I know.
Like
Fantastic.
for everyone watching, listening, and not watching on YouTube, Mo is like in the jungle right now, and like all of a sudden the wind came, and it was an
Eagle
epic scene. It was an epic scene of like all the leaves like blowing with his beautiful long hair. It was a scene to behold. So make sure to watch it on YouTube and like our video. Yeah. Call to action.
Call to action.
And hit that bell to get notified.
and the subscribe button.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Keep going, Nani.
It's fine. It's fine.
So
then
yeah,
you get this. Yeah, you get the visual of them trying to. They already try to break Yoda or try to get information from Yoda. I think with Cypher Diaz, this is what they were trying to do. Is they were trying to get information from him, and then they try to break him by giving him this opportunity to destroy the Sith. And Yoda, short-sightedly, which is obviously a foreshadowing, tells Anakin they cannot escape. If we have a chance to, we have to eliminate them. And then you actually see when they attack that Anakin decapitating Dooku, which is how eventually it ends up happening.
Without a prompt, with no prompts.
With no prompts, just straight up decapitating him. Yep. And then Yoda fighting Palpatine and Anakin showing up towards the end. And you have visually, it's very similar to the revenge fight, because in a lot of the scenes you have like Palpatine above Yoda.
Yeah.
And then Palpatine gives him the option to end the war by just letting Anakin die. And Yoda saying the future is not yours yet. And I will sacrifice.
Interesting thing to say, because I'm like, oh, did Filoni know about World Between Worlds at this point?
Did you think he was already planning?
It's just such a oddly specific thing to say. Yeah. I don't know.
The future is not yours yet. And then he follows it with, I will sacrifice anything, but preserve the good. And he saves Anakin.
Yep.
And basically dies.
Such an interesting thing to say, because sometimes people would say like, oh, like if we have to kill 5 people for the greater good, then so be it. But it's one of those like interesting moral dilemmas. It's like, is it? Are you actually contributing to the greater good by killing people? Because killing people is such an evil thing, right? So like that's the thing that he was delving there with. It's just like he knows that there's a potentiality to like stop the Empire by doing that, but he has to sacrifice a life. This is like what is ultimately the right thing. And it's like he shows the light, and the light is saving what's right there, because the future is uncertain. You can't change the future if you don't know the future, because always in motion the future is. But you can save a person that's right there in front of you, and that's the ultimate act of good, to like save what you know you can save. So I don't know. I thought it was like such a good framing device for what the light and what the light is and what good is. It's like good is just doing what you know is right at the moment, because you can't count on the future.
And,
you
and
don't
it
know who
ties
else is going to intervene. Yeah, you don't know who else is going to intervene in the future. You don't know what's going to happen in that moment, regardless of the fact that Yoda from the beginning knew that Anakin was a threat. But it doesn't matter. At this point, you know who Anakin is, and you're not going to let him die just because somebody's telling you the future's going to change if you let him die. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think I cut you off. Mo, I'm sorry. You were gonna.
No, I cut you off, man.
Oh, that's good. We all
We all
share,
cut each other off.
respect each other.
Triad.
We're the triad. Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
right. Who's the one that did that? I don't remember who did that.
Was it
Ryan? Was it?
No.
Katrina?
It was
Katrina?
Katrina.
Katrina.
It was Katrina that gave us the.
So
Make sure to listen to that episode, guys. If you haven't, the Katrina episode was fantastic. Try it. But after he obviously succeeds in his mission and passes his test and does not succumb to the temptations of the dark side of Papa Palpatine, Yoda finally gets back into his little baby TIE interceptor, Jedi Starfighter, and flies back to Coruscant. And in Coruscant, I think it's interesting to kind of finish this, which is the way that we started with what Mo was saying. He goes into that awesome Jedi courtyard, which is like a Japanese meditation garden. And the last thing that the camera pans up to is the tree of the courtyard. And like Mo said in the beginning, so he spoiled it. They spoiled it, sorry. Instead of like leaves falling, it's like a flower blooming. And that's the end of the episode.
well, yes, but before Yoda goes away, Yoda asks Serenity, "That am I?" And Serenity answers, "In a way," which is very interesting because, and then comes the enlightenment spirit balance. That's the point where. So we see the all the arcs. We see Yoda recognizing there's a vision, there's something beyond. Then we see the trials, the temptations, the machination of like what's understanding what is your reality, who are you, and can you love yourself and transcend your fears. Then you have the third arc. You have Yoda with a saber. The saber is that being you, the power gained, can you discern reality from illusion? It's that cutting between the both worlds. It's like you can delineate things. And then the death of the ego. That's what Serenity was aiming at. Yes, you are dead in a way because you yourself don't exist. Now you are a transcendent being. You're there to help others achieve and get the light passed on. It's no longer about you. It's not you can't win the war. You can't win anything because you're not. You're just now part of the living force to help the cosmic force.
The cosmic force
blossom.
And it's what you were saying. And he's
that gave me
enlightenment, spirit, balance, and there is another Skywalker.
And there's another.
Yes.
There's always another.
And then
there's many.
Yeah, there's many. But they started doing that.
Get this shirt at our store, by the way.
No, but they start with that theme that you kind of like need to leave the Clone Wars in that first episode with Qui-Gon. Like this is not the end. This is not where this ends. And then you get it here, and then you get it with the actual, last line of the episode, which is like, we might not get victory in the Clone Wars, but victory for all time.
No, but I do like that. Before that, he also says that like it doesn't matter like if we win this. He says something along the lines of like there is no winning in war. There's always something that we'll lose. And I'm like,
no, and he says something.
Yoda from Empire.
All lose in war. Everybody loses in war.
Yeah, and once we decided to join the war and the bloodshed, we were blinded by that, and we gave power to that instead of like being mindful of the Force, which it's obviously fantastic, but I think it frames so well what happens in Revenge also, because I always had a really sour taste in my mouth with that battle between Palpatine and Yoda. I was like, he went down like a chump.
Yeah.
Like, this is
It's just a
so
stupid
bad.
fight. Yeah.
I know it is a stupid fight, but looking at from this lens, it kind of makes it more empowering. It kind of makes it seem like Yoda was just like playing with him, and it's like, oh, assume that he won because I am gonna run away because this is not my purpose. I already know that I'm not winning the Clone Wars. I want you to assume that I'm gone and in exile and defeated because I have found my new path. Now
I think
know.
it's a combination.
Yeah,
I think it's a combination. I don't think it's completely that, because I do think that Yoda actually was fighting for realsies. You know, I do think he was like, oh, because it's that thing that's tying back to what we were saying before. It's like he has to fight for the light. And when he's confronted with Sidious, he's like, okay, I mean, this is the
if
dark.
I can get rid of him now, I will.
I gotta see, because there's no one else around. I gotta see if this is gonna happen, bro. I'm gonna try. But like within it, like even in his defeat, because when Bail Organa picks him up, he actually does seem like a little butthurt. He's like, oh shit, I lost that one. But then he's like, okay, into exile I must go. But he knows what's up. I think it's a combination. I think he understands that like he won't win that fight, but that he has to fight it. He has to fight it for the light. So it's like, I mean, I don't know. I'm not Dave Filoni. I'm just this is
or George Lucas
speculation or George Lucas.
Yeah.
Good point.
But I do
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, but I think it frames it better as well, because it's like, because the trial wasn't the training. The trial was just to see if he was worthy of receiving the training, of receiving what they call the great gift, which is that transcendence into maintaining your individuality, even if you join the cosmic force.
How to bring back your consciousness.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And then that's why, and obviously explained that Qui-Gon didn't receive all his training, so he could communicate, but he couldn't manifest. But it ties everything together, because then you have Obi-Wan that is left in Tatooine, communing with Qui-Gon, trying to follow this path as well, which is the last mission that Yoda gives him. It's like, you have to watch over Luke, and you will probably get communications from your old master. And this is
coming soon to Disney Plus.
Coming soon to Disney Plus, yes. And obviously we know that Obi-Wan is able to achieve it because he does it, while fighting Darth Vader. Like, I will do it in front of you. Yoda achieves it well. He's obviously very old and everything, but you see him, actually disappear. So he actually transcends. Luke does it as well.
Vader does it. I mean, Anakin.
Cry. Oh my God. Anakin is able to do it as well. It's very limited.
Which is
and then
odd.
So far.
It's like, how did Anakin do it? It's like, it's fine. I'm not going to, like, I still like the movie. I'm just like, you did a lot of setup for why these guys were able to do it. All of a sudden, this other guy is able to do it. He's the chosen one. Fine, I'll let it go.
Yeah.
But,
and Leia was able to do it too.
Oh, but Leia, come on, Leia's a badass.
Yeah.
I don't question Leia. Yoda's training got so advanced in terms of his communing with the cosmic force that he's able to transcend the cosmic force and touch the living force to be able to summon lightning to burn down the first Jedi temple in The Last Jedi.
Yes.
That's how uber powerful Yoda is able to become through his training.
Yep.
Although
Qui-Gon could just move some furniture.
That poses a good question. Is lightning part of the cosmic force or part of the living force?
What if it's like I'm gonna tie it a little bit to like Marvel with like Nexus beings, all these things that like live in between the realms, and I think lightning communicates with both things. So I think that's why he's able to touch it. It obviously affects the living force, so like the physical realm, but it communes into the cosmic force. And that's why.
Well, and lightning is both creation and destruction at the same time, too.
Because Palpy, everyone knows Palpy loves lightning. He can't turn it off. Once he gets going, it's just staying on.
Oh yeah, and even pretend Anakin got electrocuted. I mean, how many times has Anakin gotten electrocuted?
I think it's hilarious that like little Annie has been electrocuted so much by force lightning, but he himself was never able to wield force lightning. like he just got the short end of the stick on that one.
But anything, I think we're kind of through this conversation. I don't know if you guys want to add anything in conclusion, but I think we've covered most of it.
I think the only thing left to discuss is like more so the comparisons, right? Of like how Mortis worked versus how this Yoda arc worked. If like there's one that we prefer versus the other one, if one works better versus the other one, because I think they're very similar but very different at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I think even if they're super similar, obviously, they're hard to compare because this is just Yoda's journey, and Mortis, you have Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, and you have, you have the light, the dark, the father. It's a little hard to compare, honestly. Yeah. I think, even though they're in the same vein of myth and exploring the truth of the Force. Yeah. They're still, and I think they both work in different ways.
Yeah, like to me, Mortis is more like an exploration of like the Force and what are its ramifications of the Force and the greater system. This is more of a what are the ramifications of being part of the Force. What can I learn of the Force and what can I affect within the Force? So it's a very personal. Even though Morty's arc was personal to Anakin and probably to everybody else, but this is the journey to the self and coming back.
Yes.
And letting go of all expectations, letting go of everything you thought you were meant to be doing. I think this is more transcendent. It's more personal. And it touches on the complexity of the human mind at the end of the day. How we are just beasts that came to be in a forest that somehow evolved this weird consciousness that's aware of its surrounding, which by its virtue of being aware brings conflict. It brings tension. It brings war. It brings the idea of the duality. The I am separate from this.
Oh, that was perfect. The minute you said that, the wind just came in. It's like you control the Force, my friend.
Hey, I should not get into that right now, but that's a conversation for another day. But I loved like how this journey, the Morty's journey is not a circle in the sense that none of the characters that were there at the end of the day were able to bring that knowledge into the galaxy, and because they all got their memory wiped out.
Yeah, they forgot.
It's not a circle. It's this, right? It's like they start, they flip, but then it doesn't meet.
It doesn't lead anywhere. It's in a way it's more of a how can we fans understand the Force? That was kind of at least what I'm interpreting Mortis ended up being, and this ended up being a journey back home, which is interesting how at the end Yoda tells R2, yeah, we're going back home. And then once they're home, Mace and Obi-Wan are like, well, do you learn anything experience anything?
Nope.
And Yoda was like, yes and no. Like and that is the true answer of transcending.
Because it's going back to that
place because nothing really changes. Nothing changes at all. You can say no, but you can say yes because your relationship to everything has changed. That's that's when you are not longer bound by duality. You are
Mhm.
living. You are in that balance between the living and the cosmic force. Everything is a yes and no, but you're at peace with that.
Yeah.
And it
Mhm.
blossoms.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I don't know. I to me, like one of the best things I've heard is like, sometimes we think we're like we have to imagine ourselves like we're a flower. We're like, oh, let me grow. I want to grow. I want to bloom. I want to. The flower can say it 1,000 times, but it'll just needs water and sunlight and time.
And
And with
time.
time, that flower will bloom. So why waste your time trying to change yourself,
Rush
trying
it.
to bud and rush it
Mhm. Mhm.
when you just need to nurture yourself? Nurture, and that while nurturing that, you nurture others around you and you
Mhm.
blossom and you make others blossom instead of focusing. Yes, it's all part of that. Look at, I mean, there's death everywhere, but then there's life. That's the beauty.
It's all part of the cycle.
It's all part of the cycle
Mhm.
that we are part of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we have
Write it
this
down. Write it down. Yeah.
we have this unique opportunity to, through our intentions, impart and change and make things change around us. And that was it's just very, to me, it's a very heartwarming and calming like arc, because you just go back home. It's the journey back home, the journey back to
Mhm.
who you
Mhm.
are.
Where it's when you get back, it's different, but it's the same.
Yeah,
But you have what you need to continue your journey.
but now you have you. Before you didn't have you. Now you have you.
Exactly. It's the elixir, right? That's in the hero's
Yeah.
journeys. Like you have the elixir to fix what you need to from your point of origin. But then it
And he
just starts
actually
all over again. Yeah.
imparts it this time. Because in Mortis, you don't really have anything to impart, but in this one, you have something to impart. Like right now, he doesn't tell them, but when he's ready to, he imparts it onto Obi-Wan.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Which is a good point. I never actually saw Mortis in that way, which is to make it an invalid arc because no one grows from it because their minds are wiped. But in that sense, yeah, it's like you said, Mo. It's for us. It's not for the characters because none of the characters remember what happened. So like it's like nothing could have happened, and they would have been in that same position that they were in. So there wasn't any growth that they had was like undone. So everything else was for the viewer's benefit, which is a good point that I hadn't thought of. So I will accept it humbly and give points to this Yoda arc that I was not giving it. So you've changed my mind.
that's what we're here for.
That's what we're
And
here
that's why
for.
Mo's a genius.
And that's why we also want our fans to change our minds and
Yeah.
tell us what you think. And
Constructively, yeah.
do
Don't
you
don't
do
Yes.
you hate this analysis or do you love it? Did you
Yeah.
like,
leave a
because
So I
that's the
comment
think,
beauty of
below.
this.
Yeah.
yeah. So I think on this note, then viewers, let us know what you think. Let us know if you want other arcs in the Clone Wars and Rebels universe to be explored. Like, let us know what you actually like, don't like. Do you guys want to add anything else before we sign up?
No, I think this was a fantastic first solo episode without guests for the Triad, and it was definitely one of the best type of episodes we do is when we discuss some of these Clone Wars arcs / Force philosophical arcs. So definitely, like you were saying, Nanny, if anyone else has suggestions, please leave them in the comment below or leave us a comment on Twitter or Instagram so that we can definitely accommodate and have like way more stimulating and interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, and
And
don't forget, we have a bunch of cool T-shirts on
yes,
the T Public, and we also take requests for T-shirts. So if there's like some lightsaber that you don't see there, or character or something, leave us a comment, and who knows, you might get your wish, and then you can wear it and support the podcast. It really helps out
it
because
does. Thank
we
you
got
to
merch.
everybody who has already made a purchase. I hope you're enjoying your shirts. And if they ever come funky, just send an email to T Public
We
Make them
can't do
sure.
anything exactly.
No. But they're really good. They'll send you back 1,000 copies of it until you get it right. So then you can donate the extra shirts.
Mhm.
So by win, and everybody's winning. But oh yeah,
Anyway, what
yes.
did you want to say?
No,
What do you want to say, Mo?
the word that was like eluding me before was
Uh-huh.
equanimity, which
Equanimity.
is
That is a good word.
yes, which is
He has the best words.
the combination of all those 5 beings and taking off their masks. It's just being an equanimity. You are
Mhm, mhm.
at the same time confused, serene, happy, sad, but everything is living under one roof in peace.
Mm,
There you go.
there you go.
So peace for everybody.
Dropping Matt knowledge.
Stay safe.
Yeah.
So, equanimity be unto all of you. We are the Triad of the Force. Follow us on Twitter. We are on Instagram as well. YouTube,
Mhm.
Triad of the Force. Search us, subscribe, leave suggestions, like. I think
And ring that bell. Ring that bell too, just in
ring
case.
that bell. Yes.
Subscribe.
I think with that, we are the Triad. Thanks for
Try.
tuning
We love you all.
in. May the Force be